Hi, and welcome to Art with Mrs. Torres. Today we are going to be learning about the Rockhopper Penguin. Why do they call him the Rockhopper Penguin? Well, you can see from the photo behind me that he is jumping from rock to rock. This is how he gets around. He doesn't walk very well, he waddles, and he can't fly because penguins can't fly, even though they're birds. The way that the Rockhopper Penguin gets around is he jumps from rock to rock. Now, when we go to the beach, we are able to walk from the ocean onto the sandy shore. However, where the Rockhopper Penguin lives, which is on the southern tip of South America, the shore is not a soft sandy shore. It's a hard, dangerous, sharp, rocky cliff. So when the ocean waves bring the penguins in from when they've been out at sea hunting, they have to jump from rock to rock, and they have to do it quickly before the ocean wave drags them back out again. Sometimes it's going to take them 10 to 15 times to be able to get onto the safe shore. Now, another thing I want you to notice is his fun hairstyle. Look at all those feathers on top of his head. He looks kind of like a rock star, doesn't he? That's what we're going to be drawing today. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to teach you how to draw a Rockhopper Penguin.
First off, you got to check out the feathers on top of his head. Doesn't he kind of look like a rock star? Those feathers are only specific to this type of penguin, which is called a crested penguin. This penguin that we're drawing today is a rockhopper penguin. There's another penguin called a macaroni penguin that has similar feathers. However, the macaroni penguin only has them on his eyebrows. So what we're going to be using today to draw our project, we are going to be using a white piece of paper. Now, I'm going to be using construction paper. It's a little thicker, but regular copy paper would work fine. You're also going to need a separate piece of paper to mount your penguin on, because we're going to be cutting him out. So I'm using a piece of blue paper. If you don't have blue paper, you could just get another white piece of paper and color it later. You're also going to be needing our basic items that we use every week, which is a pencil, an eraser, a Sharpie marker. You're going to need some crayons for coloring, a glue stick, and a pair of scissors. So I'm going to have you pause the video, go gather up these items, and then you're going to meet me back here. Welcome back. We're going to begin by using our white piece of paper first. So we're going to be creating not only our penguin, but also the rock underneath our penguin. So the first thing I'm going to have you do is take a piece of paper and fold it in half. Once you have folded that piece of paper in half, you're going to cut along the line here. One piece of paper we're going to be using for the penguin, and the other piece of paper we're going to be using for a rock. So take one piece of paper, and we're going to put it tall like a door. We're going to take that piece of paper, and we're going to start to sketch out our penguin. So the first thing I want you to notice when you're looking at the photograph of our Rockhopper penguin, not only is our penguin very rectangular if you look at his body, but we're also going to be saving some room up at the top of his head for his plumage of feathers. So I'm going to begin by finding the center of my paper, drawing a small dot, and I'm going to draw a rectangle around that dot. This is going to begin the shaping of my penguin. Now, once I've created that rectangle very lightly, I'm going to add his rounded head up on top. Once I've created that rounded head, I'm going to now start to change the front. Right under here, I'm going to round it. So what I'm going to be doing is starting to create his face. Next, I'm going to be taking right here in the center of this area, and I'm going to start to create his beak. So when I'm looking at his beak, he's got a rounded top to the beak, and it comes down to a point. He has an extra little flap on both sides of his beak here. You can add that if you'd like or keep it simple. Next, we're going to create his eyes. So I'm going to come right over here to this side and I'm just going to make 2 gentle curves where the bottom of his eye is going to go. Then I'm going to create a rounded top. So I'm kind of changing up the shape of his eyes a little just to make him look a little happier. And I'm going to be having him looking up at his feathers on top of his head. I'm going to add a little highlight, half circle at the top. And then I'll be coloring in this area with my marker later. Now, right here at the top of his head, I want you to very softly just draw a little half curve above his head. This is where we're going to start to create his feathers. So all of our feathers are going to start at this area and they're going to start going up toward that line. Just going to make a few little marks. Later, we'll go in and we'll cut this with our scissors once we're done drawing everything else. Now, I want you to notice the feathers also curl up like horns. They come out, almost looking like he's scared. And some of them even come down. Kind of looks like a crazy lion's mane. Now, there is one accent of feathers right here above his eye, so it's very important that we make a curved line that comes down on both sides, right above his beak. And this part here, we'll make sure to color bright yellow later. Now from here, I want to start to create his body. I'm going to round his shoulders here, and then round the bottom of the rectangle down here for his body. And now you're going to decide how you want his wings to go. So I'm going to make one wing go all the way to the edge of the paper here, and the other wing go all the way to the edge of the paper on this side. I'm going to erase this section right here. Now I'm going to round this white section of his feathers by curving his chest here and then bringing it back out again. I'm going to match it on this side, curving it here and bringing it back out again, leaving a little bit of black on this side and the other side. Now the bottom section here is where his feet are going to go. So we want his feet kind of resting underneath his body, and you can either tilt one foot off to the side if you'd like to. So this is going to be how our penguin is going to be balancing on top of the rock. So I'm going to find kind of the center point here, and I'm going to draw two lines that are coming out on an angle. So when the Rockhopper Penguin is swimming in the ocean, he has to get to shore for safety, and he jumps out of the water. The ocean waves are so strong that they kind of push him. So you're going to curve two toes around on both sides, and then you're going to do a center toe in the middle. So as that ocean wave pushes him toward the shore, the rocky cliffs of the shore, he hops out of the water and then jumps across the rocky stones. Now sometimes those waves will come crashing back down on him again, and he'll have to try it later over and over until he finally gets to safety. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to decide where I want this other foot. Kind of making two angled lines out. It's about the same width as this one. And basically what you're doing is you're just kind of drawing a point for the middle toe and a rounded toe on both sides. Okay. So now, once I've created this part of my penguin, I'm going to go in and start to use my marker to do all my detail work. So I'm going to be working with my Sharpie marker. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So let's go back to our photograph. So the first thing you're noticing is he has this plumage of feathers that stick up at the top of his forehead, and then he has long feathers that kind of splay out. Most of them are being formed right here along this marking of yellow. So I'm going to first do these ones up here at the top, starting from the top of his head, and I'm just going to go up and just draw a few kind of wispy feathers going up like this. And now I want to start making some longer feathers. There's another penguin called the macaroni penguin. It has similar feathers, but the macaroni penguin only has these plumages of feathers coming off of his eyebrows, and the colors are a little bit more orange. But the Rockhopper penguin, he's got that vibrant yellow. Now, once I've created kind of this crazy hairstyle for the feathers, I'm going to start to bring that line down toward his beak. And we want to make sure we have a little extra stripe to remind us later when we're coloring that part's going to be bright yellow. And the short feathers in the middle, these ones will color black later with a crayon. Now on the side of his head, I'm just going to come down and connect to the shoulders, and I'm just going to very softly kind of feather the underside of his chin. And very softly come across his shoulders here, and then a little bit smoother on his wing. So his wings, unfortunately, don't help him fly. He's not able to fly at all. What he uses his wings for is for swimming. He's a wonderful swimmer, and he spends about 75% of his life in the water, mostly searching for food. Then he'll come back to shore. As I mentioned earlier, he's going to go through that giant ocean wave, crashing onto the shore, hopping up onto the very sharp rocks. He'll get knocked back into the ocean several times until he finally makes it to safety. And then once he's up on shore, that's where he'll rest. So outlining the feet, outlining the body, and then I do to kind of separate the white chest from the black part of the body. If you see in my photo here, part of that black is hidden behind his body, but for today, I'm going to bring that stomach in just a little bit more so we can see a little bit more of the contrast between the white and the black feathers. Now, let's go up and work on his face. You want to make sure you're holding your pen straight up and down where you're working on his eyes. That way you have the sharpest point. Don't color anything in. Just for right now, just ink in your eyes. And then I got that small white highlight. And then what I'm going to have you do is actually go in and go a couple times around that highlight to make the pupil, but leave a small space there. The Rockhopper Penguin, the iris, which is the colored part of his eye, is very unique. His iris, the colored part of his eye, is red. It's not the color like our eyes. He actually has a red. So I'm going to show you another picture. Check out this one. So here is a flock of the Rockhopper penguins. They're also called a rookery or a colony or even a wattle. They're called a wattle. And this is the Rockhopper penguins actually jumping. You can see that ragged surface. So they've already cleared the ocean. Now they're on shore and they're jumping from one rock to the other. But I want you to notice the color of their eyes. Bright red. Bright red. And they have pink feet and orange beaks. Now, once you have created your Rockhopper penguin, then we'll go in with our magic rubber eraser and we're going to erase all of our pencil lines. So go ahead and pause your video and erase your pencil lines and meet me back here. Okay, I've erased my pencil lines and now I'm going to go in using a crayon to start adding some color to my penguin. Now the first color I want to find is yellow. I'm going to come in and really accentuate the yellow where his feathers are bright yellow right here up in the crown of his head. So I'm just scribbling with my crayon and really making a bold marking of that yellow. I'm also going to add yellow to his beak. And then once I'm done with my yellow, then the next color I'm going to work with is an orange in his beak. I'm going to leave a little bit of more yellow on one side and fill in the orange everywhere else. While I have the orange on my hand, I'm going to pop a little bit of orange right here into the iris of the eye. And then I'm going to go in with a red, and I'll color the red over the orange just to kind of make that red pop a little bit more by adding a hint of orange to it. It makes it a little bit lighter in one area, a little darker in the other. And the next color I'm going to be looking for is some type of pink for his feet. A lot of times when I am coloring with crayons, you want to make sure you have an extra couple pieces of paper on the bottom, just to make sure that you're not picking up any pattern or texture from the table underneath you. So I have several pieces of construction paper underneath this one. Now once I've colored some pink on the feet, I can go back in with a darker pink or a red or gray and just add a little outline around the edge. And on the underside, right where the feathers would be, I'm going to add a little darker area there for a shadow. Once my feet are done, now I'm going to go in and start to color my penguin. So the first color I want to look for is gray. And so if you don't have a gray crayon, you could also use your pencil, or you could use a black crayon and just color softly with it. So if you'll notice, even though the penguin has a white belly, there are some shadows. Now you don't have to copy this exact photo, but what you do want to do is just softly go around the belly, right along the edge, and just add a little gray, add a shadow. And then on the wing of the penguin, if you were looking at the underside of the wing, you would see that there's some gray on it. So depending on how you want to draw your penguin today, so you can have his wing facing out. And if you want to have it facing out, you would just go in and draw an extra line here. So this would be the underside, and this would be the top rim of his wing. So if you're going to draw his wing facing up, you might want to add just a little bit of gray underneath the wing. You can leave a few patches of white there also. And then I'm going to go across the chest and just very softly come in and add a few little textured lines like this, just so that it doesn't look flat, that it actually looks like there's some soft downy feathers there. So a penguin's feathers are different than a bird's feathers. They are able to be more buoyant. They're able to swim, and most feathers on birds are not able to keep them submerged in the water. And penguins are amazing swimmers. They swim almost like dolphins. They kind of go up and down like this through the ocean. They pop out of the ocean to catch a breath of air, and they're able to hold the breath for a very long time while they're searching for food. They eat crustaceans, krill, small fish. Right, let's move on to the next color, which is going to be black. This is our main color, but you don't want to go in with a black marker. I find that by coloring with a crayon, you can get a little bit softer effect. So I'm going to start over here on his wing, and right up here where his shoulder is next to his white fur. And I'm just going to come in very softly and color that black in. I don't want it really heavy. That way I can go in and color it a little darker where I want it to be shadowed, and a little lighter where I want it to be a little brighter. So I'm just going to come in, color the tip of his wing, the edge of his wing on this side. Now on this wing here, I'm going to have his wing facing forward, so the outer part of his wing is solid black. So I'm going to go in and now color his wing black on this side. Try to remember when you're coloring to try to keep your lines all facing one direction. Now I want you to notice this line right there. Do you see that line? Remember how I was telling you just a few minutes ago that when you're coloring, you want to make sure you don't have any paper underneath. Do you see that line? That line is coming from the edge of my paper underneath. Do you see that? So it's very important that when you're coloring, you don't have any papers tucked underneath, or any rough surface. You want to always have an extra piece of paper underneath. So now I'm going to darken my wing on the edge, maybe kind of build it up a little bit darker as I go along, especially at the tip. I'm going to color his side of his body black as well. His shoulders are black. And then I'm going to start to work on his face. So underneath his chin, he kind of has this rim right here. There's a dividing line of white feathers and black. So I'm going to color all of his face black. Now I don't want to just go in and scribble really hard. I'm going to come in very softly first, just around the edge. Not coloring really hard yet. I'm going to build that up. Coloring in the direction that I would think his feathers would grow. So I'm not coloring side to side, up and down, back and forth, kind of coloring the way I would think his feathers would be growing on his face. And I'm going to build this crayon up, make it a little heavier later. So once I get up here to where his cheek is, I'm going to be really careful not to get it in his eyes. Speaking of eyes, right above his eyes, we want to make sure we keep those feathers yellow. But I'm going to put a little bit of black right above his eye. There we go. Now I can go in and color a little darker around the edge. And around his beak. And then this strip right here between his eyebrows. So once I have colored in between here, you also want to brush a little crayon in between the marker. That way we have a really soft line, and then we have those harder lines of our marker. I'm going to do the same up here. Because the black gives a little bit different effect with the crayon than it does with the hard, sharp line of the marker. Okay, final thing, I'm going to take my black crayon and just add a little shadow right around the edge of his foot and underneath his body, right here, along the top of his foot. You can see the difference. Do the same on this side, just adding just a little bit of black. I'm not pressing hard, just nice and soft. You could also use your gray if you don't have your black crayon near you. All right, so now we're going to get ready to do our next part of our picture. And you're actually going to be going on an adventure outside to do this. So we need to create a surface that's uneven and textured like the rocks that our penguin stands on. So I want you to notice that it's very rough and textured. So what we're going to be doing is taking this extra piece of paper and we're going to be going outside. And I want you to look outside, maybe on the side of your house, possibly on the cement. And what you're going to be doing is bringing some crayons with you. So the colors you're going to want to bring with you are gray, black, and brown. Now you're going to take these crayons outside and you're going to set your piece of paper on top of that rough surface. And so you don't want to do it here on the table because it's very smooth. So if you look at my texture here, so I laid my piece of paper on top of my wall and I colored with my first color, which was gray. And I dragged it across the wall and I scribbled it like this, all in one direction. And then I picked up my paper and moved it to a new section of the wall and I colored with my second color, which was brown. And then I picked up my paper and I moved to the third section of the wall and I colored with black. So you can see that all of my textures are very different. So I'm going to have you pause the video. You're going to take your paper outside and you are going to take your crayons, your 3 crayons, black, brown, and gray. And you're going to go out and you're going to texture this surface of paper and then meet me back here. You are ready for the next step. Well, welcome back. Now we're going to be taking our penguin picture and our bumpy surface and we're going to be creating a rock for our Rockhopper penguin to be standing on. So you're going to need your background paper just to make sure that everything fits. So I'm going to lay down my background paper. I'm going to hold up my penguin to make sure that we're going to be cutting him out, by the way. So is he going to fit at the top of the paper? And then all this area underneath here is where I can create my rock for my penguin to be standing on. So the first thing we're going to be doing is cutting out our penguin. Once we have our penguin cut out, then we can start to create our rock. So go ahead and get your scissors now. And what you're going to start doing is chunky cutting your paper. Now, let me tell you what chunky cut is. So chunky cut is where we go in and we just cut the big sections away around our penguin. You notice I'm not making a perfect cut. I'm just getting rid of all this extra paper. You want to be working over your desk so that all your scraps land on to your background paper. That way we can just take all those scraps that fall on our paper and we can throw those into the trash at the very end. So put your background paper down and I'm just chunky cutting. So see, I'm just cutting around the feathers, around the edges, around the wing, getting rid of all that big pieces of paper we don't need. So once I've done that, it's going to be a lot easier to go in and to start cutting out my penguin. So the first place I'm going to go to start cutting is right here at the feet. And when you're cutting, you want to hold your scissors at the bottom and you want to cut from the bottom. Take your scissors out and move them in opposite direction. And as you do that, those little triangle pieces are going to fall right out. So I'm cutting 1, then I'm turning my scissors to the other direction, 2, and your piece should fall. Now, if your piece gets stuck, which happens a lot with me when I'm doing this, don't pull it because sometimes you'll end up tearing the paper. Just keep cutting until those 2 cuts line up. 1, 2. Once you get that done, then you can go in and cut the bigger sections, the place in between the feet. So you can see by chunky cutting first, it really helps to get rid of all those little edges. We cut all those tiny little trim pieces off at the very end. So the feet will take you a little bit of time to cut. But once you get to the wings, that part's really easy. So you're going to continue cutting around your penguin, and then up here, I'm going to show you how to cut the feathers. So right now I want you to cut your wings around the body and then stop right here when you get to the feathers on his head. So meet me back here. Go ahead and pause your video and continue to cut. Well, welcome back. Okay, I know this looks really strange right now, but I'm going to show you how to kind of get that neat feather texture when we're cutting. So I want you to look right here. This is what we're going to be working on now. So I recommend taking your paper and turning your paper like this to start to cut the sides. We want all those pieces to keep landing on our background paper. So I'm going to hold my paper like this, and I'm going to be cutting a tiny cut in, and then another cut right next to it so it forms a little triangle piece that cuts out. Do you see that? So I'm going to show you that against the background. Then I'm going to come over here and do it again. So what you want to end up with are little points that stick out with a space in between. So each time I'm making a new cut, I want to leave a little gap in between. And I'm going to cut in and make sure this comes to a point. So let's say I cut in like this, and I'm left with this flat edge like that. You want to go in and make sure that that comes to a point on the end, like this. It's going to make it look a little bit more natural. So I'm going to go in now and just kind of keep cutting these little triangle pieces out so that I'm outlining all this very fun feathers. So I'm going to do this whole section here. Then when I come up to this top area, this part will be the same way, except you're just going to be cutting smaller ones. So you're going to come a little bit closer, like this, kind of chunky cut that section away. And I'm going to do exactly what we were doing before, but I'm just going to be cutting smaller, tiny little triangles in. But please make sure some of those triangles are a little bit longer than the others. Let me show you, cutting some out. You can see those little points stick out. You see right here? So this section I want to cut a little shorter so this one sticks out. All right, so you're going to continue cutting out all these feathers, then meet me back here when you're done. Welcome back. I finished cutting all of my little feathers out. I'm trying to keep them at kind of sharp points at the ends, and most of my scraps are on my background paper. So now what I'm going to be doing is taking my background paper, gathering up all the scraps, and tossing these in the trash, and then I will meet you back here once I do that. Welcome back. I throw my trash away. Now I'm going to figure out where I want to place my penguin, and I'm going to be now using this piece of paper to create my rock formation that he's going to be standing on. So you want to be able to line up the bottom of your paper with the edge of the background paper. So that's the most important part first, that you have the flat side down here, and then you're going to kind of create this curved shape that the penguin is standing on. But if you notice, the rocks are very jagged and rough. So you don't want to make just a perfectly round hump. You want to make it a little bit more precarious for him to stand on. So I'm going to lay this down here at the bottom, because that is going to be my rock at the bottom. And now I'm going to decide how to create the edge. So I'm just going to use my Sharpie marker, and I'm going to start to design this kind of wonky, crooked rock. And I want it to be kind of a little bit more narrow at the top and wider at the bottom. By the way, it doesn't have to fill the whole bottom of the paper. You can still have some of the background paper behind it. So once I've created it, then I can go ahead and make the top. And you want to make a few stiff, sharp, angled lines coming off the sides. We'll shade those in later. Close up my marker. Now I'm going to cut out my rock. I'll meet you back here when I'm done. So I have my rock cut out. I have my penguin. Now I'm going to go in and shade my rock so it looks even more realistic. So I'm going to go in with my black crayon and right around the edge of the rock, I'm going to go in. Oh, I'm going to remove my background paper, by the way, because I don't want to get any crayon on it. I'm just going to add a little shadow around the edge of each black line. So I'm just lightly going in with my black crayon and adding a little shaded edge and around the edge of the actual rock itself. Then I'm going to kind of scribble and cast a shadow under each one of those little cracks. So I'm just going to kind of scribble a very light shadow underneath the rock where that little piece juts out, because it would cast a shadow. Okay, now we have a couple different options here. So the first option is you can take your paper, the background paper, and you can mount this and mount your Rockhopper Penguin on it like this. Now, if you are going to do that, by the way, you do want to put a little shadow where his feet would go, but I'm not going to do that until I'm done gluing them down. So you can be done with your project right here. So that's your first option. Your second option is to draw a horizon line on your background paper with your crayon and draw some darker blue and green and add some water. So you could just choose a horizon line like this and draw a line across your paper. And then take your crayon and only going in a horizontal direction, back and forth like this. Just going to create a few shades of the ocean. So I'm going to use a little green, a little blue. If you have turquoise, you can add that in also. Darker blue in the background. You could add a little bit of white. You'll notice I'm only going side to side, not up and down. Darker in some areas. Then you can go in with your white. If you notice that it's a little lighter toward. Just going to go in and add some white. Then you can take your white up here and add just some soft, fluffy clouds. So you don't want to actually draw a cloud. You just want to, once again, do the same thing we were doing before and only scribbling from left to right, horizontal. Since I am left-handed, I'm tilting my paper slightly. If you're right-handed, you might want to tilt it this way and color this direction. And then I'm going to press a little harder in a few spots. And to break up the sky, you can also add just a tiny bit of blue, but I wouldn't color too heavy, just a little bit, just in a few areas. And then go back over that blue with the white when you're done. You want your ocean to have a little bit different color than the sky. You definitely want there to be a little bit of a dividing line. I'm going in with a little bit of purple right here. Now, once I have my sky, then my background is done. I can mount my rock. And I can then glue on my penguin. So once you are ready, you can get your glue stick on and you can start to mount it. Now, one other option, if you don't want to do this, is you could mount your entire picture on a white piece of paper and do a background, or you could mount it onto a black piece of paper, like this. And that would look fantastic also. So I'm going to get my glue stick ready, and I'm going to glue down my rock first, lining it up at the bottom. Then I'm going to glue down my penguin like this. And once you've glued down your penguin, you're going to want to go in and add a shadow underneath. So let me start by gluing my two pieces, and then I'll show you the shadow when I'm done. So go ahead and glue your picture, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, don't forget to close up your glue stick when you're done. Cap it so it's ready for the next time. And now we're going to go in and add a little shadow underneath his feet. So I have the toes still a little bit not too sticky, so I'm just going to go in, and wherever his toe would be resting on the rock, there's going to be a shadow underneath his foot. So I'm just kind of copying the same pattern as the toe by just adding a shadow underneath, and do it on the other foot. And then when I was gluing down my Rockhopper Penguin, I did not glue down his feathers too tightly on the top of his head because I wanted to be able to kind of curl up those feathers at the end. So I'll show you what I mean. So see, that looks really natural now. It's kind of resting his little feet on the rock. So now right here, I'm going to come up here. I've glued down his head, and I'm just going to take a few of these little feathers. This is a good time if you notice any of your feathers are not pointed on the end. You can go back in with your scissors and trim them just to give them a little sharper point. That's better. And then you're just going to kind of lightly take a few of these little feathers, not all of them, and just kind of bend them up a little bit. Give them that wild hairstyle. Well, I hope you had fun today learning about our amazing Rockhopper Penguin. I had fun teaching you, and I will see you for our next lesson. Have a wonderful day.